what are we doing?
Buying a tree.
We're buying our Christmas tree. It's going to be Yule in a few days. I think it's on Saturday. It's also known as winter solstice. Solstice means to stand still. It's the longest night of the year, which means that after the solstice, the nights will progressively get shorter and we'll get longer days. Though we do also acknowledge that the winter goes on for a lot longer than after the winter solstice. Some of the traditions that we think of as Christmas traditions actually come from Yule and come from the winter solstice. Things like a Christmas tree, bringing in evergreens, the use of lights to kind of combat the dark. Pagan traditions definitely have continued and definitely been appropriated by Christianity, but we still celebrate them. And the gift giving and everything else is all part of that season. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a Yule wreath. And I make these pretty much every year. I embroider them and I really enjoy the practice. You can give them away as gifts. The ones that I make are quite small, so they can be hung in trees or on a wall. You can make them bigger too. So if you have some red fabric and some scraps of green fabric and some embroidery thread, you can easily make one of these. One of the things that is important to remember is it's not precise. You can use any kind of stitches that you want, and you can use any kind of beads or ephemera that you have to hand. It doesn't have to be exactly like mine. As you all know, I am not a fan of perfection or precision. I like things to be fluid and expressive. So have fun with the wreath. Look at that, that's so festive and pretty. So I'm going to use these as the basis for an embroidered wreath, and I usually keep them quite small because then they finish really easily, which you can hang them on a tree or wherever you want to. I've got some beads, as I said, people gave me beads, and I have a ton of green ones, and again, they're pale green. They're not really my kind of green, but I've also got some really cute ones that are gold. And I'm going to use those to make some pagan-inspired Yule wreaths with some of the fabrics that I've got. The red always looks really great against the green. So I've picked this red and gold fabric to start with, and this is about a 4-inch hoop that I'm working with. I picked a larger hoop because of the size of the pattern, and I can show you what I mean by that. So you see how large this kind of motif is? If I did this with a smaller hoop, you'd just get one part of it, which kind of looks cool. But by the time I put all of the green on the outside to make the wreath design, it will cover up a lot of that. So I wanted something that was a little bigger to work with. And then I have cut some fabric, and I picked a darker green. I think the darker green goes quite nicely with that shade of red, but also it's a more kind of evergreeny, Christmassy green. And I'm going to show you the pieces that I have cut out because you're going to see how little of the fabric I used. Okay, so you see these are the tiny scraps of fabric that I'm going to use for the wreath. See how small these in fact these ones are probably a little too big, and I've divided them by pattern just so that I can see them. The idea is that you use small pieces of fabric, almost like a kind of collage effect, and then embroider over the top. and it's going to be quite an abstract design. So those are the fabrics that I have chosen. Because of the size and because of these small little scraps, you use very little fabric. This is why I always tell people, whatever you're doing, whether it's patchwork quilting, whether it's dressmaking or any kind of sewing craft, save your scraps of fabric. No matter how small, there's always a use for them. The next thing we're going to do is, using just a glue stick, I'm going to stick those pieces of fabric onto my hoop. And I use a glue stick because I find it the most effective way to keep the fabric in place temporarily. Pins on a design this size become a real hassle given how many pieces of fabric you're going to use, because you're going to use quite a few. Pinning those to the base is a bit of a hassle. Glue works really well. This stuff is water soluble, it kind of fades, you can sew through it, it doesn't stain, it doesn't seep through, it's kind of perfect. And if you find that you've used this to put a piece in place and then you want to put it somewhere else, it's really easy to just peel off. So I use these a lot. So here is the piece with all the fabric on it. Now we're going to sew the fabric onto the base, and we're going to do that with embroidery stitches, and they're going to be pretty random. I've picked 3 different greens here, and those 3 different greens are going to give it some dimension. And then after I've sewn it to the fabric with some nice stitches, we're going to add these beads. I used running stitch, seed stitch and open fishbone stitch for this wreath, and if you want to know how to do those stitches, you can go to my website and buy my stitch guide.
Another one.
Since you do the other half, come on,
Where are you going to put it?
Right here.
Good job.
It's an impressive setup.
The sewing's complete. The next thing is to add some beads to give it a nice festive sparkle. When adding beads, you need a really thin, slender beading needle. You can get them online very easily. These are the colours I've gone for. This is a red, a gold and a green, and I hope that they're going to give this a nice kind of glamorous look. And then all I'm going to do is use embroidery thread to sew them onto the wreath.